You'd have to be mad to settle here.
Hi, Zizaran here with another League starter for the upcoming 3.25 League, and this is a collab with the melee god Karn. He's been waiting for this league. This moment is his time to shine, and this is going to be Slayer, of course, and Groundslam. It looks really good. I'm very excited to showcase this build with you. And a really positive note about this build, this is Karn's League starter. So if you run into any issues, he will be able to help you with any of them. Now, normally we have a segment where it shows how to play the build. Well, we can't really do that because we don't have access to the upcoming league yet, and we don't have access to the changes. So, Karn, how is this build going to work for like mapping, and is there going to be any changes for bossing? Please keep in mind that the gameplay footage is shot before 3.25, so because of that, it is not fully representative of how the build will perform in the next patch. We don't have access to any content before it's out, but we still want to see roughly what the build looks like. There are a lot of buffs, so it'll be a lot stronger than what you're seeing.
Mapping will be pretty similar to how you play slams, mostly gonna be moving around, exerting, make sure you exert all your attacks, and then just attacking ground slam, and that's gonna be pretty straightforward in that. There's gonna be two ways to do it. We can auto exert with the new gem, if you can't be bothered pressing all the war cries yourself, or you can just press all 5-6 war cries that you have to press. So it's gonna be up to you. There's gonna be two versions of the build, one where everything is automated, or most of it, and one where you can just press everything.
And if you're manually casting them, how often will you have to cast all the war cries?
Intimidating Cry is the one that has the less exert. So you're gonna have to attack every 3 attacks. You're gonna have to intimidate again, and for the other ones, I think it's 6 exerts each.
Okay.
So these are actually kind of fine. It's mostly intimidating Cry really. That
So you can maybe just use that for bosses and rares.
Yeah, exactly.
And as always, if you consider these build guides useful, please consider subscribing. It helps us out a lot. So we are using Path of Building for this. If you're not familiar with Path of Building, I do have a separate video that shows how to use it, how it works, how to import builds and stuff like that, but I will do a brief overview. Karn has done, like we normally do for leveling systems, a step-by-step so that it's easy to go through and see where you're going to put your points, and the ascendancy points are in as well. And as you can see, very little or relatively low respecs during this. Respecking will be a lot easier because on top of regrets, we have access to gold. And then we have the automation setup and we have a blood magic setup. So you have some choices there. And then later, when we get Groundslam of Earthshaking, you can switch to that. Now, some tips for getting your Transfigured gems. It's actually really okay to farm that even in normal lab. Especially if you're a hardcore player, normal lab is very safe when you're like 30-35. And you'll get pretty decent amount of like starting currency, like alchemies and stuff like that. Even some chaos orbs get a decent amount of XP too. So it's not bad to do like 5 or 6 normal labs and hope that you get a Groundslam or Shaking. But even once you get to Merc Lab, you are able to get the option of turn Groundslam into like a Transfigured gem, and then you have a way better chance of getting the Earthshaking.
Groundslam of Earthshaking is the only Transfigured gem, so it's guaranteed once you get that option.
Here in items, we have different sets, like for example, leveling. So you can go through here. Obviously, early on, it is literally just life and resists. Weapons, I do have a separate video on how to craft melee weapons. Karn has loads of tips and stuff for that, and we even have a melee tips video with Al-Kaiser. So a lot of melee tips for this upcoming league. Early on, you can use the Rustic Sash recipe, and honestly, throwing Contempt Essences on weapons will take you very far. Later on, this is a deterministic axe, and if you check the notes, Karn has like really good info here, some like crafting info, so make sure you look through the notes. There's so much good info here, especially if it's like your first time or you're new to melee. Really worth reading while you're waiting for league start. Other than that, a lot of the gear here you can see is pretty straightforward. You might notice there's no resists on any of the gear. It's more the fact that it doesn't really matter on which piece you get the resist. You don't need specifically to get lightning res on rings. You just need to make sure that you are capped here. Amethyst rings can help a lot early on until you get crazy gear, because vermilion rings can be a little bit hard to fit, as well as like resist rings. So keep that in mind, and you should not have too hard of a time capping this resist wise. Then we have like early endgame gear. It is surprisingly easy to get close to 1000 PDPS axe. This would, you know, on hardcore league at least be close to mirror worthy before, but now thanks to the new quality and stuff like that, a lot more achievable. All the other gear here as well. This is not too crazy, and you can see that it's not using a large amount of unique items. And Replica Hinocor's sight comes from Heist, and yeah, it is quite nice. You get a large amount of accuracy, armor, max stress, and attributes. So a very decent amulet. Now, we are not going to go for suppression on this build, so that makes gearing even easier. It's basically just life, armor, and resists, so you're not losing one suffix on all of your gear. And as you can see, the tank is still really good, and this is thanks to endurance charges. And endurance charges being buffed makes this way stronger than before. Now, another thing, this build does use Writhing Jar, and it is a Slayer, so I'm gonna have Karn explain a little bit on how Slayer works and why we're using Writhing Jar.
Writhing Jar allows us to basically keep our leech going like at all times. That is very important because you get recovery and you get your damage reduction from the Brutal Fervor node. On top of that, it also allows us to get more damage. We have a lot of on-kill effects. It can also give you Onslaught, Frenzy charges. To start your map, pop the Writhing Jar, kill the worms, you get Fortify, you get Leech, maybe get a Frenzy charge, etc. And you just go on like that. And against bosses, it helps you keep up Fortify and keep up Leech whenever there is any downtime.
And Flask in general is very easy to underestimate as a new player. We are using the Flagellant prefix here, which is 3 charges when you're hit by an enemy, and especially while mapping, but also in boss fights, these will help regain some of the fast charges. And the suffixes are very important as well. Jewels, there's stats, like there's a lot of good stats here, like area damage isn't bad, attack speed's not the worst thing, so there are a lot of things you can go for, but global physical damage and global accuracy really good, and obviously life is huge for this build. And this is a really nice hardcore build, and that is why Karn is going to be playing it, getting over 7k life, and that's just at level 95, so I have even further to go here. Really good leech, decent regen, and honestly the damage looks really solid. And obviously, eventually, you can get it even better. I think the max DPS axe we can get now is like 1500, 1700. I don't even fully know. It's not unrealistic anymore to imagine that at some point in the league, if you're really going hard on this, you'll have at least 1100 or 1300. So, Karn, Groundslam of Earthshaking, are you going to use that all the time? Like, what about bosses?
No, I will be using Groundslam of Earthshaking for the entire progression, and for like maybe small bosses, nothing serious invitations, and then for pinnacle bosses to get my Watchstones, or for Ubers and things like this, I'll swap to Earthshatter, which is gonna have like a lot more single target damage and basically requires the exact same setup. You do not have to change anything in your tree. You just put in Earthshatter, change maybe a support gem, and that's about it.
So guys, as you can see, the build has loads of damage, loads of tank, and Karn is going to be league starting that, so it looks super solid. Karn, what are some big things that people could mess up on this build or do wrong?
Well, the biggest thing you can mess up probably is if you're self-casting your Warcries to just forget to exert your attacks, or maybe overlap too much and not manage your Warcries properly, I guess.
So one thing I want to explain for this build is how precise technique works. So it's 40% more attack damage if accuracy rating is higher than maximum life, but you never deal critical strikes. So this is really nice. It is literally 40% more damage, but we will have to have the actual accuracy number above 7071 in this case. Now this can be really annoying to maintain during the campaign. Do remember that these nodes are here, so that can help, and obviously precision will help as well. But getting accuracy on gear pretty important. You will really notice if this amount is smaller, and it will show you if you hit your character panel by clicking C and then clicking on the skill, not default attack, click on the skill and then look. Make sure that the flat number for accuracy is higher than your life. So there you have it. I hope this build helps you have a great league start. And remember, Karn is going to be league starting this. Make sure you check him out. Give him a lot of love. He put a lot of work into this build guide and just an absolute expert on melee. And we'll be able to help you with a lot of melee questions in general. So check him out this league start. He'll pretty much permanently be live. Either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Sub to both of us if you can. And thank you so much for watching. And try to die less than I do.